Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah. I'm a certified inclusion strategist as well. And I know within certain regions it's the middle of the summer and somebody might be looking at me like, what summer? Yes, in Europe we have like 6 weeks of summer. So some people are back from holidays, some people are just starting. And I want to be cautious of that. I know that the summer has been summering. There have been some heat waves, but I hope that this conversation brings some inspiration, some empowerment, and some clarity. I would like to share a little bit more about myself. I support companies, managers, leaders, and the team with effective collaboration. If you want to learn more, reach out or look at my LinkedIn page. You can see my name, Vivian Acquah. But today's not about me. Today, it's about the conversation that I've been eager to be having, because the reason for this is I'm currently following a training for to become a trauma informed practitioner, and it's all because of this woman, Stephanie Lemek. And I need to introduce her properly. So, Stephanie Lemek is the person who instigated this thought, and she is the founder of the Wounded Workforce, where she talks about trauma informed workplaces or managers or leadership. And this conversation will be the main frame. So, today's topic is the problem with workplace well being and why we are treating symptoms and not cause. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. It is so great to be here.
Exciting. So let me hit you off with the first question. What is your definition of humanizing the workplace?
It's really a simple answer, but somehow
Hmm.
we as humans have made it incredibly complicated. That sounds about right, right? It's really about recognizing that the workplace, the work we're doing is about the whole human that shows
Mm,
up. I am a big believer, as much as, we've talked about or honored kind of compartmentalization, a whole human is showing up in the
hmm.
workplace every day, and they're bringing with them all of their lived experience. And so to me, the idea of humanizing the workplace is really about honoring that. And it's not just how do we, provide the right supports or provide softness. It's about honoring the fact that the reason we need humans in the workplace, the reason we're able to be successful, it's in those lived experiences,
True.
education, other workplace experience, knowledge, skills, abilities, and also sometimes some not great experiences like trauma that may show up with us in the workplace. And it's understanding that all of those kind of complicated, unique components, they're the key to our success. And so really approaching work from a what does a person need to succeed here, and how can we support success for this individual and, of course, our organization, instead of focusing on maybe what is wrong with someone, why can't this person keep up, or focusing on an individual around outputs. To me, that's really what it's all about.
I like what you said about what can we do to make this person become more successful? How can we support them? How can we help them become more effective instead of blaming them, right? Activating the blame culture, because maybe it's you and not them. Maybe it comes from your past or your experience that you are portraying on the other person as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now something weird, but
I love it.
this
I love
this
weird.
this this show wouldn't be weird. It's about human, and we human, we like to do weird things or fun things, exciting things, right? So when you think about a song, what song energizes you?
Oh, this is like the hardest question you sent me,
Ooh.
because I love music. There's so much there. I'm
Mhm.
gonna dig really deep and maybe give folks a
Mhm.
song they haven't heard. So
Mhm.
something that's kind of fun and interesting about me, maybe a little unexpected, is I actually am a big fan of the Grateful Dead. So you may
Mm.
have heard of Deadhead. So I'm a
Mhm.
Deadhead. And one of my favorite songs that energizes this work specifically is this great song called Eyes of the World. by the Grateful Dead.
Mhm.
And the main line is wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. And it is like, if
Mm.
you listen to the lyrics of the song, it is like a good old fashioned hippie song. But again, it really gets to the heart of, you know, what can be a really beautiful experience of sharing humanity in this world with each other. And what if we focus on that? Instead of something else. So there are lots of songs that get me energized, especially those songs that get me pumped up for a workout. But when I think about getting pumped up for the work I'm doing, certainly that one is something that works great. And if you haven't heard the song, check it out. It's a hippie song. Don't get me wrong, but it's a really amazing one.
I mean, to see just to ask this question to see what it does on your face, like the expression, the joy, the excitement, you lighting up. And that's also one of the reasons why I love asking this question, also to learn more what makes you tick, but also to learn more to widening my musical vocabulary and also to listen. So I will definitely listen to this. I see a comment in the Okay, you have a fellow deadhead. Okay, I'm missing out. Thanks, Angela, for
Woohoo!
sharing it.
We love
Eyes
it,
of the
Angela.
World is awesome. Okay, I will look it up. I'll definitely look it up. Thank you for sharing that, Angela. And Stephanie, what would you say to your younger self today, knowing what you know today?
I think for me, one of the most important things I've learned, and honestly, and I'm still learning it, I'm still reminding myself this, is that you don't have to earn rest.
Mm,
Rest is not something that you earn. Your worth is not defined by out
mhm,
enduring everyone. Um, and some of that toughness, some of that grit, this is also a very American thing. I jokingly call it, that John Wayne tough cowboy can get through anything, white knuckle it.
mhm,
It's something a lot of us are very proud of. It's also partially for many of us a wound, an unhealed wound. And to really sit with all of that, to sit with something we've seen as a strength is also something that is a hurt, and also understand that rest is part of practice. Rest is part of success.
mhm,
I think it's really powerful because back in the day, early in my career, I'll tell the story. I get migraines, unfortunately,
mhm,
and anyone who suffers from migraines can probably relate. They can be incredibly debilitating,
mhm,
and I would, sometimes get sick to my stomach when I would have a migraine attack. I would work through them. And I remember sitting in a leadership team meeting. It was my first time I got to be part of a leadership team meeting and offsite, and I had a terrible migraine. Vivian, I stopped eating, I stopped drinking water so I could just sit through that meeting. And so I could be there and participate. And that kind of behavior was something I replicated for years. And I had an
mm.
experience where I was like, I'm physically present, but I'm not fully present.
Yeah.
And also, as I, ascended into leadership roles, I recognized the message I was sending other people that my humanity, my well-being was at the bottom of the list.
Mhm.
And I think really focusing on taking care of yourself, supporting yourself, it's been a game changer for me. And full disclosure, I still work on it. Sometimes I still do a really bad job. My husband calls me out on it, but I think that is something for me. If I could go back and I only got to tell, young Stephanie one thing, that's definitely what it would be.
I can recognize that part, but also sometimes we feel like in Europe it's called Duracell, but I know that in the US it's a different battery. You know, the bunny that has a battery that lasts
Energizer.
forever, the
Yes.
Energizer, but we are Energizers. We don't have the Duracell in ourselves, but sometimes in some cultures rest is also seen as a weakness, whilst in other cultures, rest is seen as a strength. And I want us all, what I hear also from your story, is to embrace the rest, embrace that strength, and to see it from a different angle that you can be a better person or be bringing out your best when you're well rested.
And I have a regular hot yoga practice. It's a big
Mhm.
part of who I am. I love it. And
Mhm.
I was so excited this Saturday. I hadn't been to hot yoga in about a week because I was traveling for work. And I got there and I was ready to go. And the teacher said something, and I was like perfectly timed to resonate with me. And he said, breaks are part of the practice.
Mm.
We get into this mode where we're just like running away, we're chugging away, we're
Mhm.
getting so much done. And that recognition that breaks are part of
Mhm.
how we succeed, of how
Yeah.
we do our work,
Yeah.
not an earned, but they're
Yeah.
part of it. It really stuck with me. And so that's what I'm going to be, carrying with me and reminding myself frequently as I work on this.
Mm. It also reminds me of the lady who has a community who wrote a book about rest is resilience.
Yes. Yes.
We underestimate rest, and there will come a day and a time where your body will say, well, I will shut down
Yep.
if you're not, if you are not treating me as a high priority. So rest is resilience. I really like
Mhm.
that, and I hope that the people who are listening or watching also look into those books as well.
Yeah.
Stephanie, let's go into the problem with well-being, because apparently people are treating symptoms and not the cause. So
Mhm.
the big idea behind this conversation, when you say resilience is a systems outcome instead of a personal trait, what do you mean by that, and why does that distinction matter?
Yeah. I think this is something that is incredibly powerful. I also think it's something that kind of ruffles some feathers, which but I
Mhm.
think most good ideas do. I think there are aspects of things where we can take action. And I don't
Mhm.
want to diminish kind of that self-efficacy that comes with, those actions we can take. The thing is though, especially here in the US, especially in the West, we get so fixated on individual actions and we
Mhm.
overlook the systems, the
Yeah.
things that kind of keep us stuck. And for me, I really like to focus on resilience as a systems outcome because we're not talking about it. We get so wrapped up around, what does your aura ring say? Are you meditating? Are you working out? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping enough? Here's
Yes.
this new
Yeah.
wellness, workplace yoga as ways to try and address a very common
Mhm.
symptom, a really common issue we're seeing in modern workplaces. And, primarily we see that common thread is burnout. Um,
Mhm.
and when we look at the actual definition of burnout from the World Health Organization, burnout isn't just this buzzword we came up with on the internet. There's a real, structural understanding and research from a very
Mhm.
well regarded organization, the World Health Organization. And the definition states that it is an organizational issue, that is a specific
Mm.
workplace illness. And so
Yeah.
we talk about burnout, and lots of people are focused on how we fix our own burnout, how we address it.
Mhm.
And let's
Mhm.
be real, a lot of people are selling you some snake oil, some magic beans to help you solve burnout.
Yeah.
But we're ignoring the actual definition. We're ignoring the systems that create burnout. And so when
For
we
me,
think
for me, when it's personally alarming when I know different people from different companies in different departments, and one by one they all fall out on a burnout, and I'm thinking like, this is not a personal thing. This is
no,
the organization. What is in
yeah,
the waters within the organization that is happening for people to burn out?
yeah. It's a little cheesy, but I like the analogy of, if we have a fish tank and, one fish isn't doing well, we check
Mhm.
out, we see what's going on with that fish. If all of our fish are doing poorly, if all of our fish are dying, it's something in the water. It's
Yeah.
something in the system, and
Yeah.
we need stop and actually think about that when we look at our workplaces and even beyond that, we look at the systems. So, what's causing burnout? Well, when we ask people to do the job of 3 people after a layoff,
Mm.
how
Yeah.
often has that happened? When we tell people we want them to bring their whole self to work, but there are, silent, stigmas that come with that or pushback.
Mhm.
There are all of these conditions embedded in the workplace that are inherently not humanized.
Yeah.
They're not focused on the reality. I wouldn't even say the future of work, of the goal of what we're working for. It isn't. It's the reality of we work with human beings and we have to
Mhm.
look at ways to make it sustainable. And so that's why I really like to reframe resilience as what are those systems of support that
Mhm.
actually help us recover from burnout, to
Yeah.
actually get through things. Because when we look at resilience, I think resilience is kind of the sexy buzzword of the year. It's
Mhm.
the workplace buzzword of the year. Resilience, we're often telling people, hey, just deal with this thing that
Yeah.
really sucks.
Yeah.
That's actually not what resilience is. Resilience is resilience sucks in general too, because we only build resilience by experiencing hardship. The
Mhm.
thing is, we experience a hardship that we can manage. How do we
Yeah.
manage a hardship? By the external and internal supports that we have. So, a lot of times I work with people who pick on Gen Z. I love Gen Z. I think they're a great addition to the workplace in many ways.
Mhm.
But, people will pick on Gen Z and they're like, oh, they get really frustrated about things or they don't know how to navigate things. And I'm like, well, because they haven't done it before.
Yeah.
What we need to do organizationally and as leaders is how do we get the right supports in place for someone to navigate a challenge that helps them build resilience, not to go, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I can't cope with this. I'm just done. And I mean, reflect back on your own career, your own life.
But
What
that's the part that many people forget is just like blaming things on the younger generation without whilst when they grew up, they had a mentor, they had to learn the ropes, and now we just want new people in the company and let them be ready within 2
immediately,
weeks.
immediately, without
Yeah.
anything, we're missing the
Mhm.
context. And I mean, something I say is, what stressed you out when you were 22?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I know what stressed me out when I was
Yeah.
22 is a
Yeah,
heck of a lot different
definitely.
than what would stress me out now. And that context and what I've been through, it is because I've had that process of building resilience. I've made a spelling error in hundreds of emails at this point.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
know that it's not the end of the world. Well, 22-year-old Stephanie, that would feel like the end of the world. And I can relate to that. And the thing is we're all different. And Gen Z has had a really interesting lived experience that is very different than any previous generations.
Mhm.
They have had
Definitely.
access to the internet, to social media, to,
Yeah.
the world and information at
Yeah.
their fingertips their whole lives. They've
Mhm.
also, we were talking before we jumped on a live, they've also been watched
Yeah.
and filmed and recorded and had that
Mhm.
publicized or the threat of that publicized their
Yeah.
whole lives
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And
I s
that a different thing to have to navigate. And so understanding those supports are how we actually get better. It's how we avoid burnout. It's how we treat burnout. We build a more resilient workforce by building a better workplace, not by fixing the people inside of it.
in the beginning, you mentioned something that reminded me of the lack of psychological safety because
Yeah.
sometimes people cannot be themselves or bring their whole selves or there are being silenced where
Mhm.
so much is happening regarding psychological safety or maybe there's something regarding trust or maybe there's
Mhm.
something regarding people have been put together in a team without working on that foundation as well. So I would just wanted to say that my comment section is blasting out right now. So I need to highlight a few comments from people. Thank you, people, for being patient. So I see Anglishana, and she says,
Yeah.
many of us are conditioned to ignore signals our body gives us, the migraines, the exhaustion, the tension. We normalize pushing through. That's the system we grew up in. But at some point, the responsibility becomes ours, and taking care of that is on us. But also, I also believe that it's also on the organizations, on the
Yeah.
managers, and also if your company has support, has
Mhm.
app, has a budget, don't hide them on the intranet. Make sure that you're laughing because you know it's true.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I was like, "What? What is
Don't
that?"
hide them
Yeah.
on the internet. Make sure that every person that joins the company has that in their introduction manual, or let's say every 3 months, re-emphasize these are the things that you can use to support your well-being. These are the things that you can use to boost your resilience.
I think there's really great discussion here because I think
Mhm.
there is an onus on each of us
Yeah.
to take action. But I think
Mhm.
that's where we really dig into, the power of understanding trauma-informed practices and trauma-informed
Mhm.
workplaces. It's also recognizing our inherent power and privilege within an organization. So, yes, and especially if you're a leader, please, please, please very vocally, very visibly prioritize taking care of
Mhm.
yourself and encourage your teams to do so. Because I think,
Exactly.
again, then it empowers those around them to take care of themselves. When
Yeah.
I was on the struggle bus with my migraines, if a leader very visibly and vocally took care of themselves, that would have changed the way I felt
Mm.
I could have
Yeah.
showed up. And
Yeah.
when I was in a leadership position, I'll never forget, I feel like for the last, 6 plus years, there's like a, you know, a once in a lifetime event happening every
Mhm.
5 minutes, it seems like,
Mhm.
or there is a news story or something going on in the world,
Yeah.
or even just something going on in our lives that is incredibly disruptive or activating for us as individuals. And something that I started doing was like, you know what, team, this thing just happened and my Apple Watch told me about this news story and I'm really distracted by it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a beat. If you need to, you do the same. And the
Mm.
same for you. If something comes up for you and it's
Yeah.
just a lot, take that time. I'm here. We'll figure it out. We're not saving
Yeah.
lives in our corporate office. It's nothing is that urgent. We can wait. And I think especially as leaders, recognizing that determination to take it on yourself, it
Mhm.
also empowers those individuals who do not have that same level of privilege and
Yeah.
power within the organization to feel like they have that choice.
Yeah.
So I love that
One
discussion
thing,
point.
when you talked about the Apple Watch, I thought that you were going to mention the stress. Sometimes when you are stressed, that you get a zzz from
Oh yeah,
your
oh yeah.
watch.
It's like, oh, your heart rate, the high
Exactly.
heart rate alert. I'm familiar with those,
So
unfortunately.
I thought that you were heading that way, but I also want to say something regarding the notifications. Put your phone on silent. My phone is on
Yes,
silent.
yes,
And I do have a watch, but I've minimalized the amount of notification because otherwise I'll be zapped every second and I need to
yes,
function. I
yes.
need to function. Yeah.
Mhm.
I also see the common company culture. Thank you, Anglishan. And
Yeah.
Angela is saying so much truth. Workplaces do not make it easy on employees. Thank you, Angela, for sharing that. And I see a LinkedIn user. I don't know who you are, but I think there is some anonymization in your profile. So I'm sorry for that, but I'll say what you have to share. So the problem with workplaces is that when an organization addresses HR culture, not nobody but nobody actually takes ownership of a toxic system. It doesn't matter what kind of new workplace you set up or design. You still have to be clear about the fact that this new system will inevitably bring its own culture and toxic dynamics with it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what's so tricky is the ownership aspect. I think
Yeah.
we all own the company culture to a certain extent, but again, kind of
Mhm.
mentioning that difference of power of
Yeah.
leadership and leaders and the ownership they take there. It's also
Mhm.
all of us, whether we're an individual or an organization, no matter how hard we're trying, no matter how good we're doing, we are going to do harm at some point,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
unintentional harm. And I think that is a key aspect of doing better in the workplace is having the humility to recognize that, but then also using that feedback and
Yeah.
saying, okay, we've done harm. What do we do next?
Yeah.
How can we rectify the harm? How can we do better in the future? And being transparent about that, that's uncommon if we think about the world we live in. That's a common for organizations, but it's actually really powerful. So hopefully, I understand that there's a lot for us to unpack in terms of toxic workplace behaviors, but I
Yeah.
still do have hope because I do think there are a lot of good people who are trying to do the work and looking to unravel those harms that we see.
And I also wanted to add, when you mentioned feedback, the word that came out was calling in, because too often, sometimes people speak with passion, and passion is not always being met at the same pace and at the same, I'm losing a few words. It's hot and I'm going through so much. So I'm apologizing for the words that I'm losing, but I hope that you understand that certain times calling out comes from a certain place, but I want us to practice more calling in. Let's practice more of calling in. And you're in Europe, the Dutch people, the Netherlands is more known for our directness. I want us all to practice more calling in so that we can meet the person in the middle and have that conversation with them instead of butchering them with the feedback that we have to share. So thank you. I can also see Angela. Gen Z is amazing with the right support. Definitely, definitely. I've mentored tons of them and had great results. Anglijan is laughing. I don't know why, but apparently we are funny. And Lolita is saying, agree, people managers should lead by example, and they are just as burnout as their employees. When
Mhm.
you're not great about taking yourself at the baseline, working through exhaustion, ignoring your body signs for rest and overworking, it's harder to do that. And also, you are creating a role model version of yourself, which you don't want to show, right? I don't believe in a leader ignoring their body, the signals of their body, and continuing on, and then within maybe a half year later you hear they burned out, and then the rest burns out.
I actually wrote a little bit about this on my Substack,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
our managers are in such an awful
Mhm.
position in most
Yeah, true.
organizations. And I think part of it is managers are trying to kind of cover up and
Mm.
be the band-aid for
Yeah.
really system systems that are
That
broken.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they are absorbing
Yeah.
all of the brokenness, the stress of these
Yeah.
systems that are not working because they are looking to protect their
Yeah.
employees
Yeah.
and at their own, unfortunately at their own cost of burnout,
Yeah.
of stress, of, illness. And that is part of it is if we continue to focus on that individual action instead of
Mhm.
looking at the systems we exist in, we're going to just burn out everyone. We're going to
Yeah.
run out. And that little hamster wheel will eventually stop churning because something has to give, something has to change. And
Mhm.
as much as when we look at the workplace, we talk about employees and talk about managers almost as opposites or separates, really the system is straining both groups of these people and
Yeah.
doing harm in slightly different ways, but still measurable harm. And we have to tackle that
Yeah.
as leaders, but then also as a collective of people going to work.
This is me clapping out loud because leaders now, managers from now, it's different than 10 years ago
Oh,
with
yes.
all the challenges in the workplace and everything that's happening. If you turn around, it's AI. If you turn around, it's this. If you turn around, it's that. It's the people, it's the talent shortage. It's they're dealing with a lot. And during this conversation, you have shared a word that maybe is not known by everybody. So I want to invite you to share more about the trauma informed organization or the trauma informed workplace. What do you mean by that?
It sounds scary. So probably you
Mhm.
hear trauma informed or
Mm.
people hear trauma and workplace and
Yeah,
they're like,
we
listen, I
run.
got enough to deal with, Stephanie. I can't
Exactly.
be dealing with everyone's trauma. Well,
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you a little secret. We're all dealing with everyone's trauma
Yeah.
regardless because trauma kind of it lives within us. It lives in our bodies. There's some great research. There's some great books you can read about this. Trauma impacts, statistics I frequently cite is 70% of US based adults, self identify. They're raising their own hand and say that they've had one or more traumatic experience in their
Mhm.
lifetime.
Yeah.
And really, if we look at something that's impacting 70%, probably more than that, of the
Yeah.
population, that's something we're dealing with all the time. So I'll start with trauma impacts us all, either
Yeah.
directly or indirectly. And
It's
when I
it's
say
like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
yes, yes, 100%. If that is probably a saying about trauma at the heart of
Mhm.
it. And when I say trauma informed, this is not some brilliant new concept that I came up with. I wish, but this is actually grounded in decades of research. Originally, it was research done with the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration here in the US. And the initial research was around trauma informed care. When we looked
Mhm.
at medical care or healthcare
Yeah.
or a substance abuse recovery care
Mhm.
for individuals. And what it is it looks at the fact that most people going through substance abuse or misuse recovery have a traumatic experience. How
Mhm.
can we recognize how trauma impacts individuals and kind of build structures of support into how we provide care? And what's so cool is there's lots of trauma informed stuff now. There's trauma
Mhm.
informed education. There's trauma informed yoga. And a few years
Yeah.
ago, I was like, man, I wish I should read a book about trauma-informed workplaces because it would be a great way for me to bridge diversity and inclusion initiatives in the workplace and some of the mental health challenges I'm seeing in some of the communities I support. And so I went looking for some work around trauma-informed workplaces, and I could not find what I was looking
Exactly.
for. And thus, here I am today. Here the wounded workforce is today, but really, at the heart of it, trauma-informed workplaces sound scary, but they're really about four things. Number one, we understand what trauma is and
Mhm.
how it may show up in the workplace.
Yeah.
Number two, we understand the prevalence of trauma. We already did that. You can check that box now if you've been part of this conversation. And so those are really two basic things you can do very quickly. The next two things are really about the actions we take as leaders or how we approach the workplace. It is about we actively avoid re-traumatizing survivors. And then second, we actively minimize harm in
Mm.
actions that we take. And one of the things we get to when we actively avoid re-traumatizing survivors, a lot of times people go, okay, I'm going to ask everyone about their trauma. Don't do that. We don't do that. We always,
Mhm.
always, always want to make sure that we honor that person's choice, self-efficacy, that it is completely up to them when, if, how, where,
Mhm.
why they are disclosing their experience of trauma. So we're not kind of farming for traumatic experiences. We're not asking those details. Someone may disclose that to us. but oftentimes they will not. And sometimes we don't even recognize our own traumatic experiences or trauma
Exactly.
responses showing up in ourselves.
Mhm.
I had that happen to me even after decades being the people expert in a business. I wasn't recognizing my own traumatic experience showing up in the workplace. So with that, you're probably like, well, crap, Stephanie, how do we actively avoid re-traumatizing survivors? Well, that's where we look at what trauma does to individuals. And we
Mhm.
use principles, we use tools. So in the wounded workforce, we have the 7 principles of trauma informed workplaces. We use those tools to help better understand trauma and its impacts, and we translate those to the workplace. So we can think about our approaches in a way that says, hey, if someone's experienced trauma, if we reframe this process, we reshape our approach in this way, we're going to avoid re
Yeah,
traumatization.
exactly.
And fun
Yeah.
bonus, it actually creates a better environment for everyone. So that's really the heart of what a trauma-informed workplace is. It's it's culture change, so of course it's complicated, but what it's not, what people often think it is we're not asking leaders or HR professionals to jump in and become clinicians and therapists. In fact, I really don't want you to do that. Instead, we're focused on building cultures, systems, processes that inherently support those who've experienced trauma. But really, at the heart of it, we're really supporting the fact that humans are showing up at work and building, the scaffolding, the supports that honor that.
So let's go to the managers, because sometimes managers feel like because of their task and their goal and their targets that they want to reach by the end of the year, they feel like they have to behave in a certain way, right? So
Yeah.
they have been taught to build resilient individuals through workshops and well-being perks. But what shifts in a leader's day-to-day decision once they accept that resilience is something the workplace creates and not something employees simply summon on their own?
This is a tricky one because, of course, we
Hmm.
have to operate in our span of control as a
Yeah.
leader. And so, one of the first things that I like to recommend to any leader who is looking to be better at being more trauma informed, understanding that resilience is a systems outcome. The first
Hmm.
thing I like to offer is kind of like the number one first step to being a trauma informed leader. Doesn't cost anything. It's finding ways to create choice for your team. How
Mm.
can you create choice? And it doesn't mean, giving your team carte blanche. They can do whatever they want. It can be as simple as a choice of how they get something done,
Hmm.
a choice of how they prioritize their work, a choice of this or that. Really creating choice, because at the root of a traumatic experience is a lack of choice. And so
Hmm.
when we take choice away, either intentionally or unintentionally, that can be re-traumatizing. And the thing about choice is it is empowering. It helps us feel like, oh, okay, we can do things. We have these options. We build that sense of self-efficacy. And sometimes people refer to it as kind of post-traumatic growth for certain individuals. So choice is so powerful. And really all it takes is just a couple of seconds in your day to think, how can I create choice for my team in this moment? So I think that is really important and that is great to understand. The next thing I would say is recognizing the systems in which you're operating in is really when we pull back that resilience piece. So even starting with yourself can be really powerful here. And
Hmm.
some of the comments we heard from the audience about leaders and burnout and all of these things, recognizing the toll you yourself are experiencing can be really helpful in understanding the system you're operating in and where it isn't working. And so, take 20 minutes this week and tap into things about the workplace that aren't working for you and how that's impacting you and your work.
Hmm.
And then look at what you can control and what you can't control and kind of understand that for yourself first and make those adjustments. And then I encourage you to do that for your team and invite that two-way communication. What are those things that aren't working for your team? And it could be as simple as sometimes, I'm done working right at 5 because I've got to go and get dinner on and do chores. I want to watch the nightly news, whatever. So maybe I send a couple of emails at 9 o'clock at night. Well, maybe someone gets those emails and they're like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I feel like I have to respond to this. And this is
Exactly.
what is fueling my burnout. Maybe
Mhm.
it's a small tweak where, you know, I've seen some people have beautiful notes under their email signatures that says, I don't expect you to operate in the same hours that I do. So,
Exactly.
I may send something to you at this time. Do not feel obligated
Mhm.
to respond. Or one of my favorite tricks is if you're a late or early morning email sender, schedule your email. Send it
Yeah.
the next morning. Schedule those things so they're being sent during normal work hours to
Mhm.
change those expectations. I think understanding, because we are all unique, understanding some of those systemic things that are stressing you out and understanding what you can and can't control, and then doing the same for your team is a great place to start. And it really honors the fact that you, as a leader, there's a lot within your organization you cannot control. And I don't expect you to magically change everything overnight. That's not a realistic expectation. That's not
Mhm.
fair. But I think starting with yourself and then looking into your team and recognizing what you can and cannot adjust can be incredibly powerful.
I wanna make it more concrete because we are here not just as the Oprah show or just as a
Sure.
chit chat, because sometimes doing things yourself within a team, sometimes you may have your blindfolders on or you're
Mhm.
not seeing things. So bringing in people like myself or Stephanie to support you, to guide
Yep.
you can also be helpful. You
Yes.
will be saving time and saving money because we have experience from many, many companies as well where you can reset your team or reset yourself so that you can understand how you can become a trauma informed manager or
Yeah.
how you can become a trauma informed team as well. I get it, you want to save money, but sometimes you also need to invest. And by investing, you can also save a lot of money, time, and energy as well.
Absolutely. Especially a fresh set of eyes, especially from an
Hmm.
angle of a set of expertise.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go into a room or I'll start working with a client. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so obvious. And that
Hmm.
happens with me too.
Yeah.
I've been so tunnel vision focused on something, and you
Exactly.
go, "Oh, Stephanie, this is so obvious." And we all need that sometimes. We all need
Hmm.
that help. We all need that support because we get so focused on, what we're working on, what's right in front of us. And we also, unfortunately, a lot of us get really used to environments, systems, cultures that aren't actually working. We're coping because we need to. And sometimes being able to pull out of that, sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need that other perspective. So I think that's an excellent call out that sometimes we really do need that outside perspective to do this
True.
effectively.
I just want to check in with you. We are 45 minutes past, and I have like two questions.
Oh, you can have as much time with me as you want.
Okay. Okay, let me ask the following then. What is a question that most leaders are afraid to ask out loud, and what will be your answer?
Why?
Is that the question why? Okay.
It's the question why. Um,
Mhm.
I think I think a lot of times most of us need a lot of us need context. A lot of us need to understand why. What are we doing this? Whether it is the why because we're like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Or maybe it's the why because of, some anxiety. It's like, whoa, we're investing in AI. Is it because our plan is to eventually get rid of everyone's jobs?
Mhm.
It's the why. It's the
Yeah.
context. It's the what's actually going on in this environment. And I know I picked a really, really simple question, but I think a lot of times we're afraid to ask why or we don't ask why
Mm.
because we get a
Yeah.
lot of pushback.
Yeah.
As much as we, talk about psychological safety and trust in workplaces, we suck at creating it in
Mhm.
organizations. We are bad at it. And I think part of it is a lot of us are, whether intentionally or unintentionally, we're kind of like hoarding power, hoarding
Mhm.
information. We got to have
Yeah.
this, we got to protect it. And that's why I often talk a lot about thoughtful transparency and building trust through thoughtful transparency. I say thoughtful transparency because we're not going to run around telling everyone everything. That's not helpful. And sometimes we have
Mhm.
to be thoughtful about confidentiality and other things that come into the play
True.
in the workplace. But being transparent, being clear, sometimes transparency is saying, I don't know. I think that is a way we really build trust and kind of bolster that idea of psychological
Yeah.
safety. And I think most organizations have created an environment where we are not asking those questions. Because
Yeah, and
why? Why can kind of telegraph as a disagreement or can telegraph as annoying. Think of, the toddler, and how often they
mhm.
ask you why. A context and understanding is helpful and powerful for all of us, but a lot of times it's poorly received in organizations, poorly received by leaders. Think about your
Also what I
reaction the last time you
what
got asked why for folks out there in the audience. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
what I wanted to add when it comes to psychological safety, trust, or effective collaboration, communication, we assume that everybody knows the rules of engagement of the
Yes.
individuals, of the team, of the organization. By that assumption, you're already creating an environment for failure. You're creating a recipe for failure. And if you, as a leader or as a team member, you want to set yourself up for success. You want to set your people up for success. So creating that foundation where you work, collaborate together on what does trust look like for you. And it makes me think of Minda Hart's her book, like Talk to Me Nice. He talks about the trust languages,
Mhm.
but also psychological safety, right? From Amy Edmondson's perspective, how often are we intentionally talking and addressing and creating that foundation when it comes to psychological safety? I know I not as much as we should. I know.
Oh, absolutely not. And I have a fun exercise I like to do, and
Mhm.
you probably did it
Mhm.
as part of the training. But one of the things I like to look at is trust. We talk about trust a lot. I'm a big definition person. I think we talk about certain terms a lot. We don't actually do a great job defining them. We don't like kind of pull back the layers and get down to what it really looks like and how it operates in our lives and in our workplace. And
Mhm.
so, one thing I love to do when I talk about trust, and I'll do this in a variety of different activities. I love to pull it into, activities with leaders because we all have a really different relationship with
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, that is informed by our lives, our lived experience, our values, our upbringings, all these different things. And one thing I like to focus on is there's this concept of automatic trusters versus
Mhm.
evidence-based trusters. And it's
Yeah.
not right or wrong. But for many of us, I'm an automatic truster. It's you approach a new relationship, with an automatic level of trust. Automatically, you're like, I trust you, and we're going to
Yeah.
go in and do this together. And evidence based trusters are like, I'm going to need to see some evidence before I'm ready to, extend that level of trust. What's interesting about that, and for me, it was something that was very interesting when I explored my own relationship with trust. As that automatic truster, what's interesting is a trust infraction or something that kind of betrays trust. It's actually easier to betray my trust as an
Mhm.
automatic truster than an evidence based truster
Yeah.
because it kind of compromises my worldview. And it's much harder once that happens. You're not earning that trust back. On the flip side, evidence based trusters, it's harder to betray or compromise that trust because they
It is
already have some
evidence-based.
evidence built
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, again, it's not right or wrong, it's different. And when we
Mhm.
understand that, we show up in a better way. And also, better able to work with others and
Yeah.
understand how they're showing up and approaching trust. Think about that. If you thought just for a second, how do I approach trust? And if you really want to maybe spend more than a few seconds, why I approach trust in
Hmm.
that way,
Yeah.
it can be really helpful in understanding
But we
how
don't
you're
have these
navigating the workplace.
conversations in the
We don't.
workplace. We
We
don't.
don't.
We don't spend enough time to talk about where does trust come from and how can I be trusted? Because in some cultures, people trust each other by being on time. They value and respect time, and in other cultures, they want you. They want to get to know you. They want to
Yes.
see you. They want to have a cup of coffee, and then in a matter of time, which is the
Mhm.
Dutch way of doing things, then eventually they will trust you after a few meetings. That's how we
Right.
do it.
And it's not right. Again, it's not right or wrong. It's an
Hmm.
understanding of ourselves and the people around us and how we can better navigate not just workplaces, but our society and interact in more productive ways.
Okay, I have a few comments coming in because of what were talking about. So I found out it's Clyde. Hi, Clyde. Thank you for sharing your comment. Lead by example is a cheap reference because leadership is not a selection of characterizations concern personification, I guess. I explained this in my book, and he has an upcoming book, The Anatomy. It's in Dutch, The
Yeah.
Anatomy of Leadership. So I'm curious to hear more about this, Clyde. And Lolita is sharing 100% agree. I've observed that leaders really don't like to answer why, thank you, to be thoughtfully transparent about context or giving clarity. I honestly can't think of a leader of a colleague who was able to say, I don't know. Ooh, that's a good one. The I don't know part. I've never heard a leader say, I don't know, because there's
It's
always a pressure to know. Yeah,
No one
yeah,
knows everything. It's
yeah, yeah.
actually the advice I give. So a lot of times we'll talk about being more vulnerable as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I'm talking to, traditionally very male-dominated fields about
Yeah,
mental health and well-being.
yeah.
We'll talk about vulnerability, and it's like vulnerability is saying, I don't know.
Ugh. It's
If
a
you
yucky
want to get
word.
better at vulnerability, say, I don't know. And none
Yeah,
of us know
yeah,
everything. And if we
exactly.
really want to invite a more human workplace, what is
Yeah,
more human than saying, I don't know? No one knows
exactly,
everything. So I love
exactly.
that. And it's such a great call out because being able to say, I don't know, being able to ask why, those
Mhm.
are real conversations, and that's at that heart of that psychological safety we desire, but we're so bad at creating.
Yeah, I love that. We have reached the final question. What is your I know it's 2026 this year, and we have already passed halfway through, but what is your wish for 2030 when it comes to humanizing the workplace and trauma-informed workplace?
I think my wish is I can't believe we're already so close to 2030. You kind of just blew my mind
Exactly.
with that. I think my greatest wish, and I think it's a realistic wish, is a realization and a focus on how can we change the systems, not
Mm,
just the individuals? How do
yeah.
we change the conditions, not the coping?
Mm,
Really focusing on how do we get better? And I think that takes time. I'm realistic about
mhm.
that, but I think if we made a concerted effort to understand that, to
Yeah.
recognize that we can do a lot of good. And if you think about if we change one broken thing in a system, one broken thing in an organization, think of the ripple that that has. Think of that
Ooh,
impact.
yeah.
And it's the same with trauma-informed workplaces. If you do one thing that's trauma-informed in terms of creating a process, in terms of your leadership
Mhm.
style, maybe you take that choice idea I gave you, you do that one thing, that creates a ripple effect on your team, within your organization, within the lives of the people you work with, what they're bringing home to their families and friends and communities. So, as simple as it may seem to think about the systems, the structure, it really
Mhm.
is this incredibly powerful catalyst for really massive change that can impact not only the work lives, but just the lives of the people all over the world in general. So that is my wish, and I hope it's not too far fetched. I think we can do
No,
it.
no, no. It's definitely not. And I would like to add, look at your span of control, because sometimes we look at things outside of our span of control, saying, "Yeah, but I cannot change that system."
Yeah,
But there is a system within the system, and that's your team, your culture, your team culture. What can you do within your team in your span of control and support your people, but also support yourself? It's just like the saying, when you are in an airplane and you're with a child, you put the oxygen mask on first
mhm,
before you give the
yes,
oxygen mask to your child. So, what are you doing for yourself? And think about rest is resilience. Think about what Stephanie shared in the beginning regarding the signals she ignored, right? And think about how you can show up and become better and lead better, energized as well.
absolutely. This was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for saying yes. And thank you for being on a mission to boost trauma informed workplaces and the information regarding this, because this is something that we do need. There's a lot of harm, not only in the US, it's there's harm everywhere,
Here.
everywhere in the world, but we want to challenge the workplace to be more trauma informed. So thank you, Stephanie, as well.
Thank you so much, Vivian. And thank you everyone who joined.
Yes, thank you. Until next time, everybody. And also, if you don't know me, connect with me and also connect with Stephanie. Follow her, because she shares a lot of information regarding trauma informed, regarding well being, regarding burnout. And she's truly on something. And she might be coming out with something somewhere next year or within a year, 2 years. But I'll keep you
Yes.
informed.
We'll keep you posted. So follow us both.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Bye, everybody. Until next
Thank you.
time.